sponsor presents highlights of the RFS Magalies 400 at Tarleton International Raceway.
The RFS Magalies 400 signaled the end of a long and hard ABSA Off-Road Championship, with this year's event again based at the impressive Tarleton International Raceway facility on the outskirts of Krugersdorp.
Although the core business at Tarleton is drag racing, the facility is a multi-user complex with the off-road community at home in the colourful and well-organised pit area. For the second year, the RFS Magalies 400 was sponsored by competitor Chris Deploy's Retirement Fund Solutions Financial Services Company.
I think we're all fanatics in motorsport. That's the main reason. But we want to plough something back into the community with motorsport, and we think it's a good idea of doing it.
As is often the case at the final event of the year, championships were up for grabs. One of those involved in a tight title finish was Dewald van Breda.
No, nothing aggressive, no crazy things. The thing is just to finish, that's the main thing, and then you can take it through. To try and go for a win and not finishing by overshooting would take it away.
Dewald van Breda was locked in a Class D battle with reigning champion Cliff Weichelt. And down in Class E, Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux were after back-to-back titles.
The pre-race competitors' briefing always culminates in a draw for start positions for the Friday prologue to determine start positions for Saturday's race. There was a lot of light-hearted banter, with Anthony Taylor and Hannes Grobler first out of the hat in the production vehicle category.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do. If you base an event at Tarleton, it's almost obligatory to have a little fun on the drag strip that is a match for any similar facility in the world. Anthony Taylor and Hannes Grobler led off side-by-side runs on the quarter-mile strip that did not count towards scoring for the event.
The forays onto the drag strip elicited a great deal of interest among competitors and enthusiasts. The exercise also raised a few eyebrows when the Nissan Navara of Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford set the fastest time.
The fastest time in the prologue went to recently crowned South African champions Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford in a Donaldson Nissan Navara. For the three-car Nissan squad in the Premier SP class, it was the end of an era following Nissan's withdrawing from off-road racing. Looking for their sixth win of the season, Voss and Pitchford reported a clear run and were 23 seconds ahead of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Visser and Badenhorst were having their second outing in the rebuilt RFS Toyota after a huge Sun City 400 accident.
Privateers Gary Bertolt and Andre Vermeulen in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux completed the top three in the prologue. The Highveld 400 winners cut it a bit fine and were just 1 second clear of the father and son team of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin in the Micron Excel Toyota Hilux. The de Bruins had not had their happiest of seasons, but are always top 5 candidates.
Punctures were a common malady on a route that moved one competitor to observe farmers in the areas grew rocks. Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans were victims of a puncture in the second Donaldson Nissan Navara. Tollefsen and Evans were busy changing the wheel when Hein Lateghan and Chris Birkin streamed past in the first factory Castrol Toyota Hilux entry.
The Nissan crew were not the only ones to suffer when it came to punctures. Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the second Castrol Toyota Hilux were also victims.
The enforced stop dropped Taylor and Houghton down to 6th place behind teammates Lateghan and Birkin. The Castrol Toyota was followed by Terence Marsh and Pieter Groenewald, who came up with another workmanlike display in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. Behind the Regent Racing pair, Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans were mobile again and pushing hard to make up time. Teamwork is high on the list of essentials when it comes to successful off-road teams, and despite comprehensive road books and aids like GPS navigation, it can still be a tricky business. The unfortunate Nissan pair picked up another puncture 7 kilometers from the finish and drove to the end on the flat.
A puncture, a wrong slot and a stalled engine that refused to start made it a tough afternoon for veteran former champion Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore in the last of the Donaldson Nissan Navaras. While Grobler was saying goodbye to Nissan after a 33-year association, a much newer recruit in Leroy Poulter was stamping his mark on Class E in the Ferodo Nissan hardbody. Poulter and Rob Howie cracked a top 10 placing and were around 2 minutes quicker than the next Class E car.
Reigning drivers' champion Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger led the way in Class D in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux D4D, with the pair chased all the way by Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, who were second in Class E in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Behind the 4x4 Mega World car, former champion Manfred Schroeder and Gavin Gray were having their first outing of the season in the factory Ford Ranger, with the pair deputizing for regular crew Bapi Rubuluza and Kulile Vakaliza, who were tied up with exams. Schroeder was a little ring rusty, but was happy with third place.
The Horn brothers, Johan and Werner, were second in Class D in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser and looking for a repeat of their Toyota 1000 Desert Race victory. The Mpumalanga pair led home Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux, who also have good Toyota Desert Race memories. It had been a disappointing season for Thomas Rundle, partnered by Ward Huxtable on this event, and he was looking for a return to form in the turbo diesel Ford Ranger. Back in action after suffering a serious back injury on the first event of the year, Chris de Plooy had the experienced Henny ter Steege alongside him in another RFS Toyota Hilux, with the pair slowing down to see if Willem and Dana Vos needed help after rolling their Toyota Hilux.
A prologue can make or break a race, and Ford Racing's Neil Woolridge and Kenny Shortheimer were on the back foot.
It was great until we had a fuse that misbehaved slightly, so we spent about 15 minutes on the side. It was just popping out. It wouldn't overheating in the dashboard. We had some heat to build up there. You know.
Being first on the road in the prologue or a race has its pros and its cons. No dust is an obvious advantage, but sweeping the route has disadvantages.
Actually, the first 20 kilometers, thought I might get away with it. The route was fairly straightforward, wasn't too tricky. I thought, it's not too bad. In fact, no dust and things might be a good thing. And then it got tricky and technical, and we really struggled. It wasn't impossible, but you're never 100% sure. A lot of rocks, a lot of lurkers. You're the first to arrive at them, and it cost us a puncture.
On tough routes, there are times when to err on the side of caution is a good thing, and Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst chose that approach.
I thought at the stage we were overcautious, and but yeah, luckily we just tried to not have flat wheels and flat tires, but it was very nice. The first section was a little bit just flat out to the corner, flat out to the next corner, but then it became just very, very tight, and the rocks was just unbelievable, just a hell of a lot of rocks. So we were just really cautious.
Three of the four special vehicle category championships had been settled before the RFS Magalies race, with Evan Hutchison and Kim Bergman overall and Class A champions. Class B had also been settled, but the situation in Class B was fraught with possibility. 1 point separated the top two crews, with Rourke on back pair David and Gary White doing battle with reigning champions Johan and Etienne Besaidnout.
Yes, that's right. We're just 1 point behind the Besaidnout brothers, and I'm pretty sure they're going to lift their game. We're going to have to lift our game to finish in front of them. And I suppose it's all or nothing, flat out from the beginning to the end, and see if you can finish in front of the Besaidnout brothers to take the championship.
Class B waters were further muddied by KZN driver Don Thompson, who was only 5 points behind in the Drivers' Championship.
And I think we've left it to too much work to do at the end, and I think, we can definitely have to give it horns today and do our best there. We've got to win today. That's the least we can do.
In black and white, the 10th championship situation at the top of Class P, which this season has grown in terms of numbers and competitiveness.
The Special Vehicle Brigade also had their little bit of fun on Tartan's drag strip, and again, results did not count towards overall scoring. Evan Hutchinson, Achim Bergman, and the Harper father and son team got the ball rolling. But it was Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau who earned bragging rights for the specials. They set the fastest time of the day, with the total porter stopping the lights at 13.77 seconds with a terminal speed of 166 kilometers an hour.
Out on the route, Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman took full advantage of the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4's capabilities to cruise home by over a minute in the special vehicle prologue. The pair were looking for their 5th win of the season in what has been a special year for Hutchison. He also won Class A7 in the Sasol Rally Championship in the Motorrad Toyota Runx to notch up a very unique double.
There was something of a surprise when Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar brought home a futuristic-looking Century Racing CR2 in 2nd place. The car is normally driven by Corbett's father Ernest and runs in the Class P Championship. Corbett and Balzar had 19 seconds in hand over 3rd place Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat. The Harpers were involved in a battle for 2nd place in the overall championship, with Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter, and just 2 seconds separated the two cars at the finish. Also in the picture were Toyota Dealer 400 winners Nardis Alberts and Jeff Minott, who completed the top 5 in the Rapsa Bat.
6th place on the prologue went to Highveld 400 winners Gerard Du Plessis and Ferdi Segers in the aging Jimco. Du Plessis and Segers are flyers, and while they were making good progress, disaster was heading the way of Herman and Wichard Sulwat in the Sulwat Racing Zarco.
Crews call them lurkers, and hidden dangers along the route account for a high percentage of retirements in off-road races around the country. A rock just off the track turned the Sulwald father and son combination into instant spectators.
At first glance, it looked as though the Sulwat Racing Zarco had suffered a front left puncture, but closer inspection revealed more serious damage.
Not good. Yeah, no, there's that, eh? No, I didn't see that, so bad luck. End of this prologue. Oh.
A slow motion rerun illustrates just how destructive and dangerous lurkers can actually be.
The dejected Sulwalds then decided on a course of action that would possibly help other crews avoid a similar fate. They started to remove rocks from the side of the track. It was hard work, but indicative of the spirit that exists amongst the off-road competitors.
By the time Jan Kraai and Andries Voigt arrived on the scene, the track in that region was a lot safer. The Kraai-Voigt combination had 27 seconds in hand over championship leaders Johan and Etienne Besaidnout in the Edenko Bat. Such is the spirit in off-road racing that the Besaidnout's father Bez, out of the championship since mid-season, lent championship challengers David and Gary White bits and pieces of his car to help challenge his sons for the title.
Third in Class P went to impressive rookies Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in the KEC Bat. They were just over a minute behind Kraai and Voigt and 37 seconds behind the Besaidnout brothers, while Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar again dominated Class B in the Orange Tree Bat. The Sulwalds were still stranded, and the Cape crew gingerly manoeuvred their way around the stricken Zarco Magnum. Du Toit was looking at his 5th win of the season, with Pienaar, who missed the last event, in search of his 4th win of the year.
The Century Racing Bat team of Simon Beckett and Tim Curtis was 2nd in Class B and just over a minute behind Du Toit and Pienaar.
There was a clean run for Keith and Andrew Makinete in a Zarco Light. In their first year of racing, the pair showed plenty of perseverance to lie 2nd in the championship, but they were around 5 minutes off the pace set by Du Toit and Pienaar.
Back at home base, the White's Class P title chase was in danger after they failed to finish the prologue. Over at Century Racing, the atmosphere was a lot lighter.
Yeah, well, today we didn't take our Class A car out. We decided to take my dad's Class P car out, and we drove quite hard. It took me a lot to convince him to let us use his car, but we came 2nd overall, which was quite a good result, I think, for a Class P car against all the big V8s inside it.
There was plenty of evidence in the pits of tyre damage, with Evan Hutchinson stressing how important it was to stay on the track and avoid the lurkers.
Yeah, critical. I mean, that's why the buckies are so far back. I think, being first on the road here would have been very, very difficult. It's that Impel and Darber rock, which is really, really gnarly. So A couple of guys did have punches, and we thought we were going very slow, taking it easy through the rocks, but obviously that was the right thing to do. So it was the same last year. There was a huge amount of rocks out there and a lot of dust. So you're going to need to be wide awake tomorrow to get it to the finish without getting a puncture.
What's up with sheep? Always getting lost and stuck.
Help me! Help me! I'm stuck in a hole! I'm a stuck sheep! Help me!
Couldn't they be more like the Hilux? The Hilux will make mincemeat of any terrain. What a chop. All sheep carriers their woolly brains. But the Hilux can carry anything. Look at how they just follow each other blindly. Bad sheep. Sheep. Get it? Bad sheep.
Africa's deadliest striker Didier Drogba was instrumental in leading the continent's #1 ranked team Cote d'Ivoire into next year's grand showpiece event. Who will join them at the FIFA 2010 World Cup South Africa? World football lives on SuperSport.
You have to be one of them to understand the sacrifice of a pre-dawn ride, the pride of beating the climb. You have to be one of them to endure the pain of training, to experience the thrill of a peloton, to become one with the bike. This is the reward of cycling. You are one of them. And that's why you'll love the Tour du Faso. Only on SuperSport, sponsored with pride by MTN.
For energy and concentration, get Turbovite at pharmacies and selected stores. Turbovite, for work, study and play. Definitely not for sissies.
After heavy overnight rain in the area, there was some ominous-looking early morning cloud cover as crews started final preparations for the race. The overnight rain was likely to help the dust problem, but this was not met with much enthusiasm by Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford.
We're a bit disappointed that it rained last night because we need the dust in our favour today, but it's not too much of a problem. We're obviously going to control the race as much as possible. We've got 4 space frames in front of us and the rest of the crowd behind us. So we're just going to try and keep it on the road and keep it safe.
With a win under their belts this season in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen were in a confident frame of mind.
Yeah, it's our best qualifying this season in an SP, 3rd on the road for SPs, which is a great start to the morning. I think the dust is going to play a major factor here. So putting it off 3rd, I think, is a great start for the event.
The countdown to the start of the race brings with it mounting tension among both crews and their supporters. There was a good turnout of enthusiasts with a day of drama lying ahead.
Off-road races are run to real time, which means gaps between cars are according to their prologue times. Special vehicles dominate the prologue, with Voss and Pitchford the first production vehicle on the road in 4th place.
South African champions Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman had an advantage of 1 minute and 12 seconds and were quick out the starting blocks in the Motorrad Riva 1 4x4. The second car away was the Century Racing CR2 of Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar, now running in Class P after an overnight ruling that it did not comply to Class A regulations. Photographers, both amateur and professional, were out in force with plenty of action to keep them trigger happy, with Nick and Ryan Harper being chased by Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau.
It took only 4 kilometers for the race to claim its first victim, with the Corbett Balzar CR2 rendered hors de combat with a broken CV joint. They retired just as Duncan Voss and Rolf Pitchford were setting off in search of a 6th victory this season in the lead, Donaldson Nissan Navara. After 9 years and 72 races of near total domination in the production vehicle category in the APSA Championship, it was the team's final race. For Nissan supporters, it was an emotional day, with high hopes of a farewell victory.
From the K&B All-Out Truck Services sponsored helicopter, the Talton Pit area was an impressive and colourful sight, with 100 vehicles to come under starters' orders in the National and Northern Regions Championship races. Down on the ground, there was an early moment and some impressive driving skill from Gerard du Plessis in the Jimco.
There's nothing like a little 360 early in a race to get the old adrenaline going and wipe away the cobwebs. The only damage was that it allowed Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst to rapidly close in on the Jimco.
Sections of the route clearly favoured the special vehicles, and Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford were soon under attack from Nandis Alberts and Jeff Minnett in the Rapsa Bat. The Nissan crew politely moved over to allow the Bat to go blasting past. Foss and Pitchford are no slouches when it comes to rapid forward motion in an off-road car, but the V8-powered Rapsa car simply waltzed away from them.
Foss and Pitchford were soon to come under further early race pressure, this time from Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Once again, the Nissan crew politely made room for the Toyota to pass, and later earned praise from Visser for sportsmanship. Back at the start, there were the makings of a good scrap between Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen and Hugo and Jaap de Bruyn in the Micron XL Toyota. They were soon joined by Hein Lateghan and Chris Birkin in the first of the factory Castrol Toyota Hilux entries, and that heralded the start of some hectic racing between a trio of tough competitors, with the de Bruyns managing to force their way past the Atlas Copco Toyota.
The Micron XL car led a high-speed Toyota musical chairs train in a situation that was simply loaded with the potential for drama that could end in tears.
The factory Toyota crew of Hein Lateghan and Chris Birkin had the best seats in the house, as up ahead Hugo and Jaap de Bruyn and Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen jockeyed for positions. The Atlas Copco Toyota gradually built up ahead of steam, and the Highveld 400 winners moved ahead of the de Bruyns. In a case of anything you can do, we can do better, Lateghan and Birkin pulled a neat move to also move ahead of the Micron XL car.
The Keymax Bat of Jan Kraai and Andries Vogt led away the Class P contingent, with reigning champions and current leaders Johan and Etienne Besaidnout right behind them in the Adenko Bat. A third Class P crew, Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, moved over to let through Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the second Castrol Toyota Hilux, and Don Thompson and Hjalmar van Gislen also moved out of the way to let through the Regent Racing Nissan Navara of Terence Marsh and Pieter Groenewald, with early morning sun a problem for co-drivers.
With a shot at winning the Class P driver's title, the last place Thompson wanted to be was behind a production car. The KwaZulu-Natal driver is a flyer, and he took the bit between his teeth to reverse the situation and get ahead of Marsh and Groenewald.
Early Class P leaders Jan Kraai and Andries Vogt were busy sorting out a puncture when Hugo and Jaap de Bruyn, Thompson and van Gislen and the Marsh Groenewald trio went steaming by. Also up and running were Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, who pulled over when the Donaldson Nissan Navara teammates of Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore appeared on the scene. Tollefson later commented that driving behind a vastly experienced multiple South African champion gave him the opportunity to watch a master at work. With Grobler having his last drive in a Nissan, sentiment dictated that he pick up a good result.
Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux picked up a place when they went past the Horn brothers in the Class D Toyota Land Cruiser. And they now had Manfred Schroeder and Gavin Gray in their sights.
The SP Class Toyota Hilux was far too quick for the Class E Ford Ranger, and de Plooy and van Vieren quickly made short work of Schroeder and Gray. And next up for the young Pretoria pair were the experienced former South African champions Richard Schilling and Chris Davies in the ASCO. The fact that Schilling is president of the Motorsport SA Off-Road Car Racing Commission meant nothing to de Plooy and Janssen van Vieren, who showed their elders no respect whatsoever.
Within the space of a few kilometers, de Plooy and Janssen van Vieren had made up 3 places and were on a roll.
An overheating problem plagued the turbo diesel Ford Ranger of Thomas Rundle and Ward Huxtable on the prologue. After a second on the Eastern Cape 400, it's been a tough season for Rundle, who was trying to make up ground on the de Plooy van Vieren Toyota.
Behind the Ford, it was all go for Chris de Plooy Sr. and Henny Tersteege in the third RFS Toyota running in the SP class. And they quickly picked up a place when they went ahead of Jaco Swanepoel and Keith Solomon in the Jamtech Toyota Hilux.
On the special vehicle front, punctures are delayed prologue winners Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, and a fascinating duel at the front of the field had developed between Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat and Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Motorsport Porter.
Steaming up behind the race frontrunners were Gerard Du Plessis and Ferdy Segers in the 10-year-old Jimco, and production vehicle leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the new state-of-the-art RFS Toyota Hilux. That little scrap ended in favour of Visser Badenhorst, with Du Plessis and Segers picking up the almost inevitable puncture.
South African champions Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford were running nearly a minute behind production car leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, and also gave way to Hutchison and Bergman, who were mobile again after a second puncture. Vos and Pitchford were also gradually being closed down by Hein Lategan and Chris Bergen in the first of the Castrol Toyota Hilux entries, and only seconds separated the two cars.
Also making steady progress were Naeem Mossaji and Feroz Dudar, who'd moved into third place among the specials in the Tyre Rack Jimco. Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton had also picked up places in the second Castrol Toyota Hilux and were chasing after the Jimco. Mossaji and Dudar gave them a bit of a fright when they reappeared in front of the Toyota after a slight deviation from the route. Trapped in dust, Taylor had no option but to back off a little.
A little further up the road, Taylor and Houghton then took advantage of a mix-up between the Tyre Rack car and the Atlas Copco Hilux of Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen to pick up a place. Berthold and Vermeulen were the losers, with Taylor and Houghton now zeroing in on Mossaji and Dudar.
The KEC bat of the impressive Johan van Staden and James Rousseau was now running at the front of Class P. Pockets of spectators were dotted along the route, with van Staden and Rousseau opening up a slight lead over title-chasing Johan Besaidnout and brother Etienne in the Adenko bat. It was a situation that suited the Cape crew.
After starting 22nd on the road and 9th in the SP class, the Donaldson Nissan of Hannes Robler and Johan Moore had quietly moved through the field. They were almost hit by an errant toe stack when they went past Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen, with the Nissan pair now chasing after the Mikarin XL Toyota of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin.
Don Thompson's title hopes in Class P were rapidly fading, with the Zarko running without rear brakes. The KwaZulu-Natal driver and Hjalmar van Gesselen were being closed down by Terence Marsh and Pieter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. Marsh, a former professional cricketer, and Groenewald were in turn being caught by Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, with the Nissan pair running strongly in between punches. Champion Derek de Toy and Ian Pienaar were once again firmly in control of Class B in the Orange Tree bat, with the Cape pair on track for a 5th win.
Former SA production car champion Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie were still at the front of Class E in the Ferodo Nissan Hardbody, with a lead of 2.5 minutes over Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. Turning circles are sometimes a problem for the Bakkies, with Labuskaghni and Erasmus losing a few seconds at a 90-degree left. Soldiering along behind the 4x4 Mega World pair were Mpumalanga brothers Johan and Werner Horn in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser.
Thomas Rundle and Ward Huxtable also dropped a few seconds with turning circle problems and a stalled engine. The Ford pair was still struggling with an overheating problem, and at this stage of the race weren't pushing as hard as they would have liked. The Magaliesburg area is a favourite hunting ground for glider pilots, and this fellow had a bird's-eye view of proceedings.
Former champion Manfred Schroeder and Gavin Gray had settled into a steady 4th in Class E in the Ford Racing Ranger. They were quickly being caught by SP class teammates Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer, who started 40th on the road, and Nandus Alberts and Jeff Minnett, who were fighting back after losing wads of time with a major diversion away from the designated route.
There'd been a change in the pecking order at the front of the field, and in the special vehicle category, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau had moved into the lead and were pushing hard in the Total Motorsport Porter. Variawa and Rousseau had taken over the lead from Nick and Ryan Harper, with the two crews locked in a battle for the runners-up slot in the overall and Class A championships. Chris Visser and Comrades Marathon veteran Jaapie Badenhorst were leading the production vehicle field and the SP class in the RFS Toyota Hilux. They were looking strong, but ominously looming up behind them were the Castrol Toyota Works pair of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton.
Naeem Mosaji and Feroz Dudad moved into third among the specials, but behind the Tyrak Jimco there was high drama. Taylor and Houghton were leading Bertolt and Vermeulen, who were punted up the backside by Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. It was a rare mistake by the South African champions, one which was to have a profound effect on their race and prove them to be human after all.
There was another significant move when, just before the designated service point at the end of the first loop of the race, Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton finally found a way around the stubborn Naeem Mosaji and Feroz Dudad.
A lone spectator was intent on letting his mates hear the sound of a 3-litre 6-cylinder Nissan motor in full song as the KEC battle of Class P leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau went past. They still had a lead of over a minute on Johan and Etienne Besaidnout, who were now in the championship, quite content to stay in second place. Behind the Cape Town-based brothers Johan Lateghan and Chris Birkin were putting in a strong challenge in the second Castrol Toyota Hilux, and behind them, Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore had made more progress through the field.
A good dice had developed between Lateghan Birkin, Grobler Moore and Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans, who were now being chased by the RFS Toyota Hilux of Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren.
After a puncture had hampered their progress, Jan Kroy and Andries Vogt were pushing hard in the Keymax bat. They'd moved ahead of Don Thompson and Helmar van Giselen, who were still struggling with a rear brake problem. And in Class B, it was plain sailing for Derek de Tooy and Ian Pienaar.
The Ferodo Nissan hardbody of Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie was still leading Class E, but a broken torsion bar was hampering their progress. Picky Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus had closed the gap on the Nissan, and they were now around 90 seconds in arrears. Manfred Schroeder and Gavin Gray were a fair way off the pace in the Ford Ranger, but were now third after Johan and Werner Horn had fallen by the wayside in the Mulholland Toyota Land Cruiser. Behind the Ford, the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux of Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger led Class D, ahead of the Micron XL Hilux of Heinz Stumpfer and Henry Hugo.
It analyzes every detail of the road, 500 times every second. The new 2010 Range Rover Sport with adaptive dynamics.
These men are no ordinary rugby players. They possess equal parts speed, power, skill, and stamina. With this, they create something out of nothing. The ultimate players on the ultimate stage, the IRB 7 Series Dubai. Live and exclusive to Supersport. Proudly brought to you by Sasol.
Follow the stars to where they shine brightest. The UEFA Champions League. Follow the live star-studded action of the crucial group stages. World football lives on Supersport.
The first car into the designated service area for a compulsory 15-minute stop at the end of Loop 1 of the race was the Atlas Copco batch of special vehicle leaders Nick and Ryan Harper.
Any problems out there?
No, it's very, very slippery, very fast. We got lost a few times, so we've been dropping a lead with Shamir all day, up to now. But I don't know what happened to him. He slowed down and we got in front.
Are there a lot of lurkers out there?
Plenty of lurkers. You've got to be so careful, and the train's changing all the time. It's obviously raining in certain areas and not in others, so it catches you out, and then you're sliding off the corner.
There was more drama when the Atlas Copco Toyota was towed into the pits after stopping less than a kilometre from the DSP. The RFS Toyota pair of Deploy and Janssen van Vieren were happy to play Good Samaritan and give Berthold and Vermeulen a tow.
Yeah, no, like always, but yeah, it comes back to you, so you just try and help the guys out. Yeah, but otherwise in the route it was rough, but we're getting there. We passed about 10 cars, and I think we're lying 7th now. We started in 10th, so or no, we're lying 6th now actually. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll push them more and try and get a better place.
While the Atlas Copco car was hauled towards its pit, Andre Vermeulen had to face and answer the media.
Andre, what was the problem?
I don't know, it's a fuel pressure problem. We've been having it the whole morning. The fuel pressure keeps on dropping, and then eventually it just stopped out here now, about a K from DSP. So luckily, what's his name, Deploy towed us in, yeah? We'll see if we can fix it now, because it's a hell of a dice. The cars are on top of each other.
From 16th on the road and 6th in class to 4th on the road and 2nd in class represented a good morning's work for Taylor and Houghton.
Not too bad so far. It's been a bit dusty. We battled with the yellow Musaji car. Sam also having quite a good dice with Gary Berthold. We've got Duncan also up behind us, so the pressure's definitely on, but we've hopefully made up for yesterday's puncture already, so lots to play for. Going for the win.
Also going for a win, their first in National Championship racing, were Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who were comfortable Class P leaders.
Enjoying it. The guys a bit of mud there, so I took the chance and I moved into the lead, so I'm going to have to keep the pace. Looks like I built up a couple of minutes, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes lead. So I just have to go out and do it again.
First win if you do.
If I do this, it's the first win. We've tried very hard every year. Although so far this whole year, it's been difficult. And got my mindset on it. I think we're going to try and do this one.
At the other end of the scale, it had been a tough old morning for Ford racing pair Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schultheimer, who started way back of the field.
Yeah, well, starting 40th on the road's never easy, we had a lot of rain here last night, but it wasn't 20 k's out and the rain was finished. It was dusty as hell again, so we've been sitting in the dust, and fortunately there's a nice breeze blowing. So sometimes you can get past, but other times you've got to sit in the dust, and it's quite difficult. And the course is treacherous, there's just rocks and boulders everywhere, so it's really treacherous. You really got to be careful. We've had one puncture already, where one big outcrop of rocks just caught us out, but I think many people have been caught out with them, so I'm not feeling alone.
The production vehicle race order at the DSP saw 3 Toyotas out in front, with Chris Visser and Japie Badenhorst leading the 2 factory Castrol Toyota entries.
There were problems too for the Total Motorsport team.
Today has been quite fun. Passing the guys, getting front, overshooting, guys pass us. So we've changed the lead with Nick about 4 or 5 times. Eventually the last 40 Ks, 50 Ks we got in front of him. And last 10 Ks we blew the clutch on the car. So we let him pass, just lumping the car home. And we're going to change the clutch and we'll be out. So it's going to take us about half an hour.
Amongst the specials, the Harpers led Variawa and Rousseau by 33 seconds at DSP, but that was about to end. There was also a strong showing from the Class P contingent.
With Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau still stuck in the pits, the start of the second and final loop of the race gave Nick and Ryan Harper the opportunity to consolidate the lead in the special vehicle category. Among the production vehicles, Chris Visser and Japie Badenhorst faced a more difficult task, with a fired-up Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in hot pursuit in the factory Castrol Toyota Hilux. It was also the end of an era for the factory Toyota team, who were looking to go out with a bang.
Get ready to flex your pecs.
bulge those biceps and prepare to face the might of Ninja Warrior. On a course that separates the best from the rest, who will handle the pain? Can their bodies take the strain? Most will fail. Only the strongest can prevail. The hunt to find a champion is on. Ninja Warrior, only on Animax.
Supersport's Blitz channel keeps you in the know and updated with all the sporting action you've missed. All your favorite sports. All the scores. All the sports news all the time. Watch your world of sports. The Supersport Blitz channel, exclusive to your world of champions, Supersport. Proudly sponsored by Outsurance. Call us direct on 08600 60,000.
These men are no ordinary rugby players. They possess equal parts speed, power, skill, and stamina. With this, they create something out of nothing. The ultimate players on the ultimate stage, the IRB 7 Series Dubai. Live and exclusive to Supersport. Proudly brought to you by Sasol.
Not far onto the second loop, and Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton found themselves in the lead in the production vehicle category when Chris Visser and Jaapie Barnos retired the RFS Toyota Hilux with a blown engine. It was not a new situation for Taylor and Houghton, with the pair and teammates Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin at some stage or other leading every event but one this season. Taylor and Houghton were now on track to score Toyota's second win of the year after Gary Bertold and Andre Vermeulen won the Highveld 400. Also on track for their first win of the year were Nick and Ryan Harper, and problems for Variawa and Rousseau had lifted Nahim Mosaji and Feroz Duda into third in the Tire Rack Jimco.
Limpopo-based Naeem Mosaji was partnered by Mohammed Moulston in the first 6 events of the season. Business commitments then sidelined Moulston, with Feroz Duda stepping into the breach and doing a sterling job in the Tire Rack entry.
It was also turning into a good day for Toyota, with Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin running second overall, and in the SP class to teammates Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton. The versatile Latergan also has track racing and rally background, and was being chased by another versatile character in Hannes Grobler, who progressed from 22nd on the road and 9th in class to 5th on the road and 3rd in class. Grobler proved yet again that he's still highly competitive and is likely to be seen in action next year running in RFS livery.
A superb performance that carried Johan van Staden and James Rousseau into third overall in the special vehicle category, with the KEC Bat comfortably in the lead in Class P. The pair had been threatening a win all season and were gradually pulling away from Johan and Etienne Besadenhout. With championship challengers David and Gary White falling by the wayside, the Besadenhouts were more than happy to sit in second place and make sure of back-to-back titles.
Hampered throughout the day by a spate of punctures, Norwegian Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans had done a superb job of picking up the pieces and were showing the sort of guts that took them to 4th place on this year's Dakar Rally. Tollefsen and Evans were into their 3rd season in the ABSA Championship, and with Gary Bertold and Andre Vermeulen falling back down the field, were on track to finish as runners-up to teammates Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford in the overall and SP class championships. Tollefsen and Evans will be taking a sabbatical from the ABSA Off-Road Championship next year.
Don Thompson's championship hopes in Class P were all but gone. But with David White struggling in midfield in the Ruhr Combat, the KwaZulu-Natal driver had a shot at 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship. The Thompson van Gesseling Zarco had been chased all day by Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald, who were putting in another solid performance in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
And in their best performance of the season, Bula Boertes and Johan Pretorius had moved through the field almost unnoticed in the Boertes Vervoer Bat. They were looking at their first ever podium placing in what would be a massive boost in morale for the team from the Far East Rand.
Boetus has limited special vehicle experience, and his was an exceptional performance on a tough route that caught out many more experienced competitors.
Also having one of their better outings of the season were Hugo and Jaap de Bruin, who were on the fringes of a top 5 finish in the Micro and XL Toyota Hilux. Chasing after the de Bruins were former champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the turbo diesel Ford Racing Ranger. After a season spent developing the Ford, the pair have high hopes for next season. Developing a new car is not an overnight exercise, but a couple of podium finishes in the second half of the season are cause for optimism in the Ford camp.
Eating great waves of Ford dust were Toyota Dealer 400 winners Nardis Alberts and Jeff Minnett, who'd made a tremendous recovery from their disastrous start to the race. Cape Crew, Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar were still in full control of Class B in the reliable Orange Tree Bat, with win number 5 this season all but in the bag.
There was also an encouraging drive from Chris de Ploy, who'd been out of action since suffering a serious back injury on the opening event of the year. De Ploy was partnered by experienced former SA champ Henny ter Steege and is managing director of the RFS Group, which sponsors this race. De Ploy is the father of Christian, who is also racing, and away from business and off-road racing commitments, De Ploy's hobbies flying helicopters, and he says he likes any music except jazz.
After a promising start to the race, Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen were now struggling without power steering, and it was tough going for the Atlas Copco crew. They were ahead of Jan Kraai and Andries Vogt in the Keymax Property Bat, who were having a weekend best forgotten. The pair were moments away from calling it a day. Their retirement would give Christian de Ploy and Henk Janssen van Vieren a place, although the RFS crew were also headed for retirement.
The race drew huge crowds, with spectators soaking up the sun and enjoying all the action. It was a little tougher on the crews, but following the demise of Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie, the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota pair of Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus were now leading Class E. Behind Labuschagne and Erasmus, young Louis Weichelt and Maurette Besaidnout with the SP Class meet in a Class E sandwich. The N1 4x4 Ford Ranger was chasing after the Class E leaders and had KZN crew Manfred Schroeder and Gavin Gray chasing after them in the factory Ford Racing Ranger.
Reigning drivers champion Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger were in charge of Class D in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux D4D. It was a situation that kept alive Weichelt's hopes of back-to-back titles, with matters resting on the progress of championship leaders Dewald van Breda and Johan de Toy in the Northern Toyota Hilux D4D. Free State crew Loeb de Bruin and Rian Greling were now third in Class E in the Rurikon Ford Ranger, with the category turned upside down when early leaders Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie crashed out of contention at the start of the second loop.
Back in the pits, Nissan technical crew were loading a comprehensively redesigned Ferodo Nissan hardbody onto its trailer. Poulter, who started racing karts when he was about 8 years old, has won a world championship and rolled a racing car for the first time in his career to join the Roly-Poly Club in spectacular fashion.
But no, look at, it was my fault. I arrived at a corner quite quickly, and there was a lot of mud on the road. As I hit that, the car turned sideways and there's an embankment, and the embankment turned me over.
Poulter was in pretty good company, with SA champions Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford also back in the pits.
I hit the back of one of the cars ahead of me and it punctured my radiator. We came over a rise and I just went into the back of him and nudged him and it punctured my radiator. So after a couple of Ks we realized that our temperature was going up, and we had to limp back to the pits for them to give us a new radiator. And then the engine went into limp mode, so it will only idle. So that's us for today.
Back on the route, Cobus van Tonde and Rian Guapo were on the move in the Unifreight Ford Ranger. The ex-factory vehicle was running strongly, but van Tonde and Guapo had joined the ranks of those competitors to pick up a puncture. The Harry Smith crew were disputing a place in the top 10 in the SP class with Louis Weichelt, who ironically bought the N1 4x4 Ford Ranger from Van Tonde and Murray Besaidnout.
After a disastrous start to their weekend, Mike Whitehouse and brother-in-law Matthew Carlson had done a good damage control job. Their problem started on the Friday prologue when they hit a gate that bent a control arm. Once the necessary repairs had been carried out, it meant starting from the back of the grid in the mass start and a tough day at the office.
The Regent Racing pair plugged along all day, though, at a steady pace and were well rewarded with a finish that also saw them maintain a 100% finish record this season.
A racer promised so much for Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau went pear-shaped just before the end of the first loop. The damaged clutch took longer than expected to repair, and in the long run, it relegated them to 6th overall and 6th in Class A, and dropped them out of contention for the runner-up slot in the overall championship.
Talking of championships, there was drama brewing in Class D. The Northam Toyota pair of Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy had to finish no lower than 3rd for van Breda to sneak the Drivers' Championship from Cliff Weichelt. The pair also failed to finish the prologue and were part of the mass start at the back of the field.
Van Breda and de Tooy had done a great job to work their way through the field, but were coming under a little pressure from Coetzee Labuschagne and Johan Gerber in his last race in the Raceonics Nissan hardbody. The Nissan pair had also run into problems with the hardbody constantly overheating.
Watching off-road racing can provide some good exercise while plugging along at the back of the Class A field in the Calcimite Bat. John Telford, with Petrus Swart and Chris Forskink sharing co-driver duties, was the last of the classified Class A cars. It was a brave effort from the crew and typified the spirit that exists in off-road racing. Thomas Rondler and Walter Huxtable were also plugging along in an ailing turbo diesel Ford Ranger, but were well clear of the Meccarin Excel Toyota Hilux of Heini Strumpfer and Henry Hichu, who had also picked up punctures and had dropped to 4th in Class D.
Perseverance had also paid off for Legal Eagle, Johan de Klerk and Johan Pretorius in the Zarco Light. They were 10 minutes behind Class B winners Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar, but second place lifted de Klerk into 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. Perseverance was also the watchword for former circuit racer Jaco Swanepoel and Keith Solomon, who overcame a myriad of problems to almost carry the Jamtech Toyota Hilux to the finish.
At that finish, ABSA guests were enjoying some refreshments, while Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton finished with a flourish to score the first win of the season for the Factory Castrol Toyota team. A few seconds behind the Toyota were special vehicle winners Nick and Ryan Harper, who also scored their first win of the season. The Harpers crossed the line in a far more sedate fashion and were then followed home by Naheem Mossaji and Feroz Duda in the Tyre Rack Jimco. There was late drama when Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore sneaked into 2nd place ahead of Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin within 200 meters of the finish line.
It was the end of an era for Toyota Motorsport, with Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton finally getting a monkey off their backs. After a frustrating season, it was a long overdue victory.
Gee, tell me about it. You know, we've been trying so hard this year and it just hasn't come together. Now, finally, the last race of the year, we managed to pull off a win. So I think, you know, with Glenn now taking over the team and that, he's already got a winning class. I don't think there's too much work to be done for next year. But yeah, nevertheless, eventually now we've finally won it. So I tell you, it's just a great way to end the year. So to look forward to next year. And I think we're going to be very, very competitive.
As Taylor and Houghton celebrated with a traditional bubbly, there was more success on the way for Toyota, who also won classes D and E, took the Manufacturers Award and clinched the SA Manufacturers Championship. For the Harpers, there was a late scare that almost cost them the race.
It was tough. We had a 5-minute lead overall there, and we're going up that last copy. We stalled the car, and then the starter motor wouldn't work. So we thought that was it, game over, but just kept trying, and eventually it fired, and we got going again.
For Nick and Ryan Harper and the Atlas Copco team, there was a small victory bonus. The win lifted them into 2nd place in both the overall and Class A championships.
For posterity, a photograph of the winning team and a little history, with Johan van Staden and Johan Rousseau winning Class P to score their maiden national championship win.
Out of this world, out of this world. It's been a whole year. Every time we try, something comes up, we don't succeed. So Lionel gave us a taste of it, and a couple of meters before, Thompson took it. So today it was our chance. We used it well, and I'm totally satisfied. My navigator, excellent.
James, did you plan for a win this year going into your rookie season, or has this come as a bit of a surprise?
It come as a bit of a surprise to us, but we were quite motivated this morning on the way in from Pretoria. I said to Johan, today is the day. I've got the feeling, and we're going to push hard. And navigating was on the spot. The track was excellent, the markings was excellent, and we enjoyed the race fully. It was a smooth run for us.
Third overall was a fantastic result for Van Staden and Rousseau, and fourth was enough to give Johan and Etienne Besaidnout back-to-back Class P titles.
The final championship table with Hutchison and Bergman, the Hoppers and Variawa and Rousseau taking the first 3 places overall and in Class A.
Class E went to Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus, who lost the championship by a single point to Jannie Visser and Jorgs Leroux.
Yeah, we're very glad we came this far, and we didn't expect much for today, but it turned out very well, and we're very satisfied.
Class D honours went to Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger, but it wasn't enough to give Weichelt back-to-back Drivers' Championships.
Yeah, it was very tough. We, about 20 k's into the first stage, our intercooler pipe came off again. We had to fix that. A whole lot of guys passed us, and then like 60 k's from the end of the first loop, our engine mounting broke off. So we had to limp in home, and then we just strapped the whole engine, down with a strap, and then we finished the second loop.
It was also a tough day at the office for Louis Weichelt and wild animal conservationist Maret Besaidnout, who just made it into the top 10 in the SP class.
Oh, dit was klippe en nogmaals klippe. Baie lekker reis, maar rof geweest. Ons het goed gedoen op ons eerste loop, maar tweede loop het ons ongelukkig die powersteering verloor. Toe moes Louis nou maar so aankarring so. Maar ons is daarom nou hier. So, maar dit was baie lekker, maar dit was klippe.
SP class vehicles dominated the production vehicle results, with Labuskaghni and Erasmus, the lone Class E car, down in 10th place.
The final production car points table, with Donaldson, Nissan Navara teams taking the first 3 places, with Tollefson and Evans and Grobler Moore finishing behind Voss and Pitchford.